In a quiet, dimly lit study one unassuming evening, Elon Musk sat alone with an old, leather-bound Bible. It wasn't a daily habit for the tech visionary, but lately he had been searching for fresh inspiration, managing several colossal companies, each driven by relentless innovation and fierce competition, had begun to take its toll. Amid the silence of his study, a passage leapt out at him, a nugget of timeless wisdom about leadership, fairness, and the treatment of others. In that transformative moment, Musk wondered whether the ancient teachings, preserved in the Bible for millennia, might offer modern guidance for the challenges of leading a global empire. As his eyes traced the familiar verses, a thought began to crystallize in his mind. What if the principles contained in the Bible could be applied to the corporate world, not as a matter of religious doctrine, but as a framework for ethical leadership and harmonious human relations? With this idea taking hold, Musk resolved that his next series of moves in his companies would be guided by these age-old rules. It was an experiment that would spark both curiosity and apprehension among his employees and the broader public. Soon, word spread that major shifts were coming, shifts based not on quarterly profits alone, but on values such as fairness, humility, generosity, and justice. The first step in his bold new initiative was inspired by the Golden Rule from Matthew 7:12. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Musk envisioned a workplace where every interaction, from the top executives to the newest intern, would be characterized by mutual respect and equitable treatment. In a company-wide meeting that quickly became the talk of the organization, Musk announced that every employee should embody this principle. The idea was simple, yet profound. If each person treated their colleagues with the same respect they wished to receive, then the entire company would function more smoothly and efficiently. Initially, employees were baffled. It was rare for a tech CEO to invoke biblical wisdom in such a public and deliberate way, and many wondered if this was yet another one of Musk's unconventional experiments. Despite the skepticism, the seed was planted. Over the following weeks, subtle changes began to emerge. Colleagues started engaging in more considerate interactions, and the typical competitive tension slowly gave way to a more collaborative atmosphere. The transformation was not immediate or dramatic, but it was unmistakable, a gradual shift toward a culture of fairness that made even the most cynical observers take note. As employees adapted to these new expectations, a sense of unity and respect began to permeate the hallways of companies like Tesla and SpaceX. Musk's next groundbreaking change came from a more radical biblical command to honor the Sabbath. Inspired by Exodus 20:8, he instituted a policy across all his companies that mandated one full day of rest each week. No emails, no meetings, no work-related communications. In an industry known for its breakneck pace and round-the-clock demands, this decision sent shockwaves through the corporate world. Many had grown accustomed to the relentless grind, sacrificing personal time in pursuit of innovation and success. Now, Musk's policy challenged that norm, insisting that a day of rest was not a luxury but a necessity for fostering creativity and well-being. The immediate reaction was mixed. Some employees, worn thin by the constant pressure, welcomed the chance to recharge and reclaim a work-life balance. Others, especially those in high-pressure roles, worried that losing a day each week might hinder productivity and innovation. But Musk was resolute. He argued that a rested mind was inherently more creative and efficient, and that the long-term benefits of a balanced life far outweighed any short-term sacrifices. In time, even the most ardent critics began to notice a positive change. Productivity metrics improved, and there was a noticeable lift in morale. The idea that ancient biblical wisdom could rejuvenate a modern workplace was beginning to prove its worth. Emboldened by these successes, Musk pressed on with his biblical experiment. Drawing from Proverbs 11:2, when pride comes, then comes disgrace, but with humility comes wisdom. He redefined leadership within his organizations. It was no longer acceptable for managers and executives to govern solely with authority and unilateral decisions. Instead, Musk encouraged leaders to practice humility, to actively listen, to welcome feedback, and to admit when they were wrong. This shift was a radical departure from the traditional corporate model, yet gradually, a new culture of ethical leadership took root. Executives who had once been steely and unyielding learned that openness and vulnerability could foster stronger team bonds and spark innovative ideas. At the same time, Musk introduced policies that embraced the value of generosity, as outlined in Luke 6:38. Give, and it will be given to you. He reimagined business practices not just as engines for profit, but as communities that thrived on shared resources and mutual support. Departments that once operated in isolation were now encouraged to collaborate, share knowledge, and even pool manpower when necessary. Moreover, Musk's companies launched community programs to donate resources and services to local causes. Though this approach initially seemed counterintuitive in a cutthroat industry, the benefits soon became clear. Internally, a sense of camaraderie flourished, and externally, customer satisfaction and brand loyalty soared. Even more transformative was Musk's application of principles of justice and accountability, inspired by biblical calls to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. New systems were implemented across his companies to ensure transparency at every level, granting every employee a voice in reporting any form of injustice or unethical behavior. This comprehensive overhaul created an environment where fairness was paramount and every individual, regardless of rank, felt respected and secure. While these changes required significant adjustments and faced initial resistance, the long-term impact was undeniable. A workplace where ethical practices bolstered overall success. As Musk observed the gradual but steady improvements within his companies, he realized that these ancient teachings were not relics of a bygone era, but timeless principles that could reshape modern business. His methods were not about promoting a particular religion, but about embracing universal truths. Truths that could guide both personal behavior and corporate strategy. By integrating the Golden Rule, honoring the Sabbath, promoting humility, encouraging generosity, and ensuring justice, Musk had not only enhanced the efficiency and productivity of his enterprises, but had also fostered a culture of ethical leadership and compassion. The ripple effect of Musk's Bible-inspired initiatives began to extend far beyond his own companies. Other business leaders took notice and started exploring how these principles might be applied in their organizations. Conferences and seminars sprang up where ethical leadership was discussed alongside technological innovation, and case studies highlighting Musk's successes were introduced in business schools around the world. Critics argued that such measures were impractical in a fast-paced, competitive market, yet the data spoke for itself. Companies that embraced these values experienced lower turnover rates, higher employee satisfaction, and even improved financial performance over the long term. As word of these transformative changes spread, it became clear that Musk's approach was not just a passing experiment, but a pioneering blueprint for the future of business. His companies were celebrated not only for their groundbreaking technologies and ambitious projects, but also for the way they treated their people, with dignity, fairness, and respect. The world began to see that profit and ethics were not mutually exclusive. Indeed, the most sustainable and successful enterprises were those that valued the human element as much as technological progress. In this evolving landscape, Elon Musk continued to refine and expand upon his strategies. He launched additional initiatives that emphasized long-term planning and sustainable growth, drawing inspiration from Proverbs 21. 5. The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance. Each department in his companies was tasked with developing 5-year plans that prioritized not only innovation and expansion, but also ethical practices and responsible resource management. These plans were designed to ensure that every step forward was both deliberate and beneficial to all stakeholders. Musk's commitment to these principles became a cornerstone of his legacy. His willingness to integrate ancient wisdom with modern business acumen challenged conventional wisdom and inspired a global reevaluation of what it meant to lead in the 21st century. As his companies flourished under this new paradigm, Musk's influence spread across industries, from tech and manufacturing to retail and hospitality, sparking a quiet revolution in corporate ethics and leadership. As Musk's initiatives matured over time, the effects of his Bible-inspired principles rippled throughout his companies like the slow but steady surge of a rising tide. By now, the internal transformation was undeniable. Tesla, SpaceX, and his other ventures had evolved from being merely high-octane centers of innovation into workplaces that balanced groundbreaking technology with a deep-rooted culture of fairness, humility, and ethical accountability. In the early months after the implementation of the Golden Rule, employees reported subtle but powerful changes in their daily interactions. The corporate halls, once marked by terse emails and competitive posturing, were now filled with respectful dialogue and genuine collaboration. Managers began to take time to listen to their teams, and employees found themselves empowered to offer innovative solutions without fear of undue criticism. This shift wasn't orchestrated by forced mandates but grew organically, sparked by a shared understanding that treating one another well wasn't just good ethics, it was good business. Emboldened by these early successes, Musk took his experiment even further by institutionalizing the practice of Sabbath observance. The revolutionary policy of granting every employee 1 day of complete rest per week began to yield astonishing results. Initially, many skeptics worried about potential drops in productivity. But as the weeks turned into months, data emerged to the contrary. Productivity metrics steadily improved, and creative output soared as staff returned to work recharged and with fresh perspectives. The policy fostered not only a healthier work-life balance, but also a sense of loyalty and pride among employees, many of whom had long felt the relentless pressure of the tech industry. They no longer saw themselves as disposable cogs in a machine, but as valued contributors whose well-being was paramount. Simultaneously, Musk's emphasis on humility began to reshape the company's leadership landscape. Inspired by the biblical wisdom of Proverbs 11, executives were encouraged and even required to undergo training in empathetic leadership. Workshops and mentorship programs were established, where leaders learned to admit mistakes, solicit feedback, and most importantly, empower their teams. These sessions were not merely theoretical, they involved real-world exercises, role-playing difficult conversations, and even sharing personal experiences of failure and growth. Over time, many senior managers admitted that embracing humility had transformed not only their own leadership style but also the overall dynamic within their departments. Teams became more cohesive, and innovation flourished in an environment where risk was no longer stifled by fear of reprimand. Yet perhaps the most unexpected outcome of Musk's biblical experiment was the culture of generosity that began to permeate his companies. Drawing inspiration from Luke 6:38, Musk restructured internal policies to encourage resource sharing between departments. What used to be siloed pockets of expertise turned into open forums where knowledge, tools, and even manpower were shared freely. Cross-functional teams were formed not out of necessity, but out of a genuine desire to uplift one another. This internal generosity spilled over into external actions as well. Musk's companies initiated community outreach programs, donating technology, expertise, and funds to local schools, charities, and environmental projects. Customers impressed by this commitment responded with unwavering support. Brand loyalty deepened as the public recognized that these companies were about more than just cutting-edge technology. They were about building a better, more equitable world. Over time, these changes became the foundation of Musk's long-term vision for sustainable business practices. Inspired by Proverbs 21:5, each department was tasked with crafting meticulous 5-year plans that emphasized not only financial growth, but also ethical leadership, environmental responsibility, and community engagement. The planning process itself became a collaborative, transparent effort where every level of the organization was invited to contribute ideas. In boardrooms once dominated by profit-only discussions, conversations began to reflect a more balanced approach, one that integrated risk management with a commitment to doing what was right. The transformation was so profound that it began to attract attention from outside the tech sphere. Industry conferences, business schools, and media outlets around the world took note of this bold integration of ancient wisdom into modern management. Thought leaders began to study Musk's methods, and soon his initiatives were featured in academic journals and case studies as a pioneering model of ethical corporate culture. Entrepreneurs from diverse fields, ranging from retail to manufacturing, started adopting similar principles. They found that when companies treat their people with respect, encourage a healthy work-life balance, and prioritize ethical behavior over short-term gains, both employee satisfaction and long-term profitability improved dramatically. In an era characterized by fierce competition and constant disruption, Musk's approach offered a refreshing counter-narrative. It challenged the prevailing notion that success in the modern business world required ruthless efficiency and uncompromising ambition. Instead, he demonstrated that timeless principles, fairness, humility, generosity, and justice, could coexist with and indeed enhance technological innovation and profitability. His companies not only continued to lead in their respective fields, but they also became benchmarks of how ethical leadership could drive a thriving, sustainable enterprise. Internally, the atmosphere at Musk's companies had evolved into one of inclusivity and shared purpose. Employee surveys revealed record-high levels of job satisfaction, and turnover rates dropped significantly as more people found themselves inspired by the newfound corporate culture. Leaders who once operated behind closed doors began to hold open forums and town hall meetings, inviting candid discussions about the company's direction and the role that ethical practices played in its success. The ripple effect was undeniable. A workplace once known for its relentless pace now pulsed with a sense of community, purpose, and above all, hope. Looking back on these developments, Elon Musk recognized that his decision to integrate Bible rules into his business strategy had been more than a fleeting experiment. It was a deliberate, visionary leap. It wasn't about imposing a particular religious belief on his workforce. It was about embracing universal values that had guided humanity for centuries. In the pages of an ancient book, he saw a repository of wisdom that, when applied thoughtfully, could address the human challenges of the modern world. Musk himself often reflected on this journey in interviews and private conversations. "It's not about religion," he explained to a small group of executives during an off-site meeting. "It's about principles that have been tested over millennia and continue to hold true. When you build a company on the foundations of fairness, humility, and generosity, you create not just a profitable business, but a community that thrives on trust and mutual respect." His words resonated deeply with his teams, fueling a commitment to these values that transcended quarterly reports and profit margins. As Musk's companies grew and evolved, so too did their influence on the broader business landscape. Other CEOs and corporate leaders began to see that ethical leadership wasn't a barrier to success. It was a catalyst for innovation and long-term prosperity. Workshops and seminars on Bible-based business practices became increasingly popular, with Musk often invited as a guest speaker to share his insights and experiences. His candid discussions about the challenges and triumphs of integrating ancient wisdom into the high-tech world inspired countless others to re-examine their own leadership styles. Moreover, the public perception of Musk's companies began to shift. Customers, investors, and employees alike started to value not only the cutting-edge technologies that these companies produced, but also the integrity with which they were run. The corporate culture of Tesla, SpaceX, and his other ventures came to be seen as a model of how ethical practices could lead to remarkable achievements, both on the business front and in terms of social impact. Reports of improved employee morale, reduced workplace stress, and enhanced community engagement began to appear in business magazines and financial analyses, reinforcing the idea that success and ethics were not mutually exclusive. In boardrooms and strategy sessions across industries, leaders started to ask themselves, what if the principles of fairness, rest, humility, and generosity, values derived from ancient wisdom, were at the core of every business decision? The answer, as demonstrated by Musk's companies, was clear. Such principles foster an environment where innovation can flourish without sacrificing the human element. This balanced approach not only paved the way for more sustainable growth, but also helped to bridge the increasingly polarized divide between profit-driven models and those rooted in social responsibility. Ultimately, Elon Musk's integration of Bible rules into his business practices was far more than a fleeting trend or a mere marketing gimmick. It became a blueprint for a new era of corporate governance, one where ethical leadership, compassionate management, and a commitment to the greater good were valued as highly as technological breakthroughs and financial performance. As the world continued to grapple with the challenges of rapid change, Musk's pioneering approach offered a timeless lesson that sometimes the oldest ideas can pave the way for the most innovative futures. In the wake of those transformative changes, Elon Musk's vision was not confined solely to implementing a handful of biblical principles. What started as a bold experiment in leadership quickly blossomed into a full-scale cultural revolution across his companies. As employees embraced the golden rule and the benefits of regular rest, the ripple effects began to extend into every corner of the organization, and then beyond its walls. Musk's next major initiative came as he turned his attention to long-term planning and sustainable growth. Inspired by Proverbs 21:5, the plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, he challenged each department to craft detailed 5-year plans. These weren't your typical short-sighted corporate forecasts. They were comprehensive blueprints that intertwined profit goals with ethical benchmarks, community engagement, and environmental responsibility. In boardrooms that had once been echo chambers of aggressive expansion strategies, discussions now centered around deliberate, thoughtful planning. Leaders armed with new training in ethical decision-making began to see that measured progress and sustainable practices could coexist with rapid innovation. As department heads presented their plans, it became clear that the focus was no longer solely on quarterly earnings, but on building companies that could stand the test of time while nurturing the well-being of every stakeholder. Internally, the company culture experienced a metamorphosis. What had once been a cutthroat, high-pressure environment was gradually replaced by a spirit of collaboration and shared purpose. Teams that had once guarded their ideas jealously began to form cross-departmental alliances, sharing tools, expertise, and even manpower on challenging projects. Musk's advocacy for generosity, rooted in Luke 6:38, "Give and it will be given to you," had taken on a life of its own. Employees found themselves participating in peer-to-peer mentoring programs, where seasoned veterans imparted both technical skills and lessons in empathy to newer recruits. The result was a workplace where innovation wasn't stifled by competition, but was fueled by a sense of community. Productivity and creativity soared as employees began to see that working together in an atmosphere of mutual respect and support was far more rewarding than isolated individual achievements. This wave of transformation was not limited to internal operations. Musk's companies soon launched an array of community programs aimed at giving back. Recognizing that businesses thrive when their communities do, he initiated projects that provided scholarships, technical training, and even free renewable energy installations in underserved areas. The media marveled as Tesla and SpaceX began to be featured not just for their technological breakthroughs, but for their commitment to social good. Local newspapers ran stories about how employees volunteered at community centers and how the company's philanthropic efforts were changing lives, testimony to the real-world impact of principles like fairness, humility, and generosity. Critics, initially skeptical about the practicality of integrating Bible rules into high-tech business, found themselves increasingly forced to reassess their views. Some argued that a focus on ethics would stymie competitive drive, yet the numbers told a different story. Financial reports began to show not only sustained profit growth, but also improved employee retention, lower stress levels, and a marked increase in customer satisfaction. Investors started to note that companies with strong ethical cultures often outperformed their peers in the long run. Musk's revolutionary approach became a case study in several top business schools, where professors dissected his methods to show how ethical leadership could, in fact, be a driver of innovation and stability in an ever-changing market. Moreover, as Musk's initiatives gained traction, other industries began to take notice. Boardrooms in sectors as diverse as retail, manufacturing, and even hospitality started hosting seminars on Bible-based business practices. These sessions highlighted how principles like accountability, fairness, and respect could transform not just a company's bottom line, but also its social footprint. Business leaders who had once dismissed such ideas as archaic began to explore how similar strategies might be adapted to their own operations. In a world increasingly focused on short-term gains, Musk's long-view approach offered a refreshing reminder that sustainable success depended on nurturing human values as much as technological prowess. For Elon Musk, these changes carried a deeply personal resonance. In private moments with his executive teams, he often reflected on the simple yet profound wisdom he'd discovered within those ancient pages. The Bible isn't about dogma, he explained during an intimate leadership retreat. It's about universal truths, about treating people with dignity, planning with care, and giving freely of what you have. I've seen firsthand that these principles aren't relics of the past. They are the bedrock upon which a truly innovative and humane enterprise can be built. His words, delivered with the quiet intensity that had become his trademark, galvanized his colleagues and set a high bar for what ethical leadership should look like in the modern world. Internally, the cultural shift was measurable not only in improved performance metrics, but in the day-to-day experiences of employees. Staff surveys revealed unprecedented levels of job satisfaction. Employees spoke of a renewed sense of purpose, of working for a company that didn't just chase profits, but cared about their well-being and personal growth. Many credited the shift to the fact that they no longer felt like mere cogs in a relentless machine, but as valued contributors to a greater, noble mission. The new policies had also fostered an environment where creative ideas could flourish without fear of overreaching authority or relentless competition. This open, respectful atmosphere nurtured innovation in ways that traditional corporate cultures rarely could. The public, too, embraced this new paradigm. Consumer confidence in Musk's brands soared as word spread about the ethical practices underpinning their operations. Customers began to choose Tesla not only for its cutting-edge technology, but also because they felt connected to a company that treated its people and its community with respect. This shift in public perception contributed to a virtuous cycle. As the company's reputations improved, so did their market performance, proving that ethical business practices could indeed be profitable. As time went on, Elon Musk's integration of biblical principles into his companies became more than an experiment. It became his legacy. He built a corporate culture that balanced the relentless drive of technological innovation with a steadfast commitment to ethical values. His companies were not only pioneers in their respective fields, but they also set a global standard for how businesses could operate with both efficiency and compassion. Leaders from around the world began to view his methods as a blueprint for sustainable success, one that could be adapted across industries to create workplaces that valued people as much as profits. In a series of public forums and interviews, Musk elaborated on his vision for the future of business. "We are at a crossroads," he would say. "Our greatest achievements in technology will not matter if we lose our humanity in the process." By embracing timeless values, fairness, humility, generosity, and justice, we can build companies that not only succeed in the market, but also make a positive impact on the world. These words resonated with aspiring entrepreneurs, seasoned executives, and even everyday workers who longed for a workplace built on trust and mutual respect. As the revolution spread, its influence reached beyond the corporate sphere. Society as a whole began to re-examine what success meant. It was no longer enough to chase the latest technological marvel without considering its ethical implications. Instead, the pursuit of progress came with a renewed emphasis on responsibility, a commitment to making decisions that benefited not only shareholders, but also employees, communities, and the environment. By the end of this transformative era, Elon Musk's decision to infuse his companies with Bible-based principles had ignited a change that was as profound as it was unexpected. What began as an internal experiment evolved into a worldwide movement, one that challenged conventional wisdom and redefined the metrics of success. Ethical leadership, once viewed as a secondary concern, had emerged as a central pillar of corporate strategy. In this brave new world, values were not sacrificed on the altar of profit. They were the very foundation upon which enduring success was built. In the months that followed the sweeping cultural changes within his companies, the landscape at Tesla, SpaceX, and Musk's other ventures continued to evolve in ways that even he hadn't fully predicted. The initial experiments in integrating Bible-inspired principles had moved from being bold corporate mandates to becoming deeply ingrained elements of daily life within these organizations. Musk's new policies, rooted in the Golden Rule, Sabbath observance, humility, generosity, and justice, had gradually transformed the internal dynamics. Meetings that once buzzed with terse, competitive exchanges had mellowed into open forums where every voice was invited to contribute. Departments that previously guarded their innovations jealously were now collaborating on joint projects, sharing not only technical expertise but also best practices for ethical decision-making. The emphasis on long-term planning, inspired by Proverbs 21:5, led teams to develop sustainable 5-year roadmaps that balanced ambitious technological milestones with realistic, human-centered growth strategies. One of the most remarkable changes was the cultural shift that occurred organically among the employees. Initially, many had been skeptical, wondering if ancient wisdom could possibly translate to the breakneck world of high-tech innovation. But as time passed, employees began reporting an increase in job satisfaction and a newfound sense of belonging. They were no longer just cogs in an ever-turning machine. They felt like valued members of a community that prioritized fairness and mutual respect. Informal mentoring circles sprang up where seasoned professionals shared stories not only about engineering feats, but also about life lessons, failures, and the importance of humility in leadership. This evolution was captured in countless internal surveys and even in impromptu conversations in the break rooms, where laughter and thoughtful debates replaced the old culture of silent competition. Externally, the impact was just as profound. Customers, once focused solely on cutting-edge products, began to appreciate the ethical dimension of Musk's companies. Positive word of mouth spread quickly, stories of how Tesla's customer service now reflected genuine care, or how SpaceX's internal policies fostered an environment where innovation was driven by both passion and accountability. The transformation even resonated with investors. Quarterly reports began to highlight not only financial performance, but also metrics related to employee retention, workplace satisfaction, and community engagement. This holistic approach to business proved that sustainable profit and ethical practices could indeed go hand in hand. Beyond his own companies, Musk's pioneering approach became a catalyst for a broader movement across industries. Prominent CEOs in retail, manufacturing, and even finance began to explore how biblical principles could be adapted to create workplaces where integrity and compassion were as valued as productivity. Conferences and workshops on ethical leadership in the 21st century emerged, with speakers citing Musk's initiatives as a revolutionary blueprint for building companies that stand the test of time. In these gatherings, scholars debated how ancient teachings could be interpreted in today's fast-paced business world, and practitioners shared case studies demonstrating that a commitment to values like generosity and justice could drive innovation, reduce employee turnover, and foster lasting customer loyalty. Public sentiment, too, underwent a noticeable transformation. Across the globe, consumers and citizens began questioning the status quo of corporate greed and ruthless competition. Social media platforms buzzed with discussions about how businesses should not only strive for technological advancement, but also act as responsible stewards of society. News outlets featured stories about how Musk's companies had reaped the rewards of investing in their people and communities. Editorials and op-eds praised the visionary approach of integrating ethics into business practices, arguing that in a world filled with rapid technological change, the timeless values of fairness, humility, and generosity were more relevant than ever. Within the hallowed halls of academia, business schools began incorporating Musk's Bible-inspired model into their curricula. Professors developed case studies that traced the evolution of corporate culture at Tesla and SpaceX, from environments marked by fierce competition to those that championed ethical collaboration. Students debated the merits of short-term gains versus long-term sustainable growth, and many concluded that companies built on strong ethical foundations were more likely to weather economic downturns and industry disruptions. In lecture halls, the phrase Bible-based business practices evolved from a curious anomaly to a subject of rigorous academic inquiry, a testament to how Musk's approach had disrupted conventional thinking. Even the critics who had once derided Musk for what they saw as an unnecessary blending of religion and business found themselves forced to re-examine their assumptions. Some skeptics admitted that while they remained unconvinced by the notion of applying biblical rules in a secular corporate environment, they could not ignore the tangible benefits that had emerged. Productivity was up, morale was high, and the company's reputations had improved significantly. One prominent business analyst remarked in a televised interview, "Whether you subscribe to the religious aspect or not, there's no denying that Elon Musk's model is working. When you treat people with respect and build an environment where ethical behavior is rewarded, everyone wins." For Musk, these transformations were deeply personal. In private meetings with his leadership teams, he often reflected on the journey that had led him to embrace these ancient principles. "It's not about imposing a religious dogma," he explained to a group of executives during a late-night strategy session. "It's about recognizing that the wisdom of the past has a way of illuminating our path forward. When we build our companies on values that have stood the test of time, we create not just a better workplace, but a better future for everyone involved." His words resonated with his teams, who saw in him not only the relentless innovator, but also a leader who cared about the human spirit as much as the bottom line. As the years passed, the long-term effects of Musk's initiatives began to crystallize. Employee turnover dropped dramatically, and internal surveys showed that job satisfaction reached unprecedented levels. The work environment was often described by staff as uplifting and empowering, a far cry from the high-pressure, cutthroat culture that once prevailed. Innovation continued to flow, driven by teams that felt secure and respected, and the company's market performance consistently outpaced competitors, not just in terms of technology, but in overall corporate health. Musk's legacy, therefore, came to be defined not only by his groundbreaking work in space travel and electric vehicles, but also by his ability to transform corporate culture through ethical leadership. His experiment with Bible-based business practices was seen as a beacon for a more balanced, compassionate approach to leadership, one that prioritized the well-being of employees, the satisfaction of customers, and the sustainable growth of the organization. And as his methods spread beyond his own companies, they sparked a quiet revolution across the global business community. Ultimately, Elon Musk's journey demonstrated that the integration of ancient wisdom into modern business practices was not an archaic relic or a mere marketing ploy. It was a viable, powerful model for achieving long-term success. By marrying cutting-edge innovation with timeless values, Musk showed the world that profit and principles need not be at odds. Instead, when guided by fairness, humility, generosity, and justice, the drive for technological advancement could elevate the human experience, creating workplaces that not only innovate but also inspire. As this remarkable chapter in corporate history continued to unfold, one thing remained clear: the legacy of those ancient teachings was far from outdated. They were, in fact, the very foundation upon which a more equitable, sustainable, and inspiring future could be built. One that celebrated both the marvels of human ingenuity and the enduring power of ethical leadership. In the final stages of this transformative journey, the full scope of Elon Musk's revolutionary approach began to crystallize. What had started as an audacious experiment in applying ancient biblical principles to modern corporate culture had, over time, reshaped not only his companies but also the broader landscape of ethical business practices around the world. Within Musk's enterprises, the results were evident. The culture of fairness, humility, and generosity was no longer a set of isolated policies. It had become the heartbeat of the organization. Employees across every level spoke passionately of a workplace that now balanced relentless innovation with genuine care for human well-being. In team meetings, the familiar echoes of the old cutthroat environment had been replaced by open forums where ideas flowed freely and every voice was heard. Managers, once distant and unyielding, now led by example, admitting mistakes, actively seeking input, and fostering an atmosphere where collaboration thrived. The Golden Rule was no longer just a catchphrase, but a living standard that transformed daily interactions into opportunities for connection and growth. The impact on productivity and innovation was both surprising and undeniable. With a mandatory Sabbath day providing a much-needed respite, employees returned to their work recharged, their minds brimming with fresh perspectives. Projects that had once seemed mired in deadlines and burnout were now reinvigorated by a creative spirit born of balanced well-being. The carefully designed 5-year plans, rooted in the diligent planning championed by Proverbs 21:5, ensured that every step forward was thoughtful and sustainable. Rather than chasing rapid short-term gains, teams were now building lasting value, prioritizing ethical decision-making and long-term societal impact. Externally, Musk's pioneering strategies sparked a broader paradigm shift. As news of Tesla's, SpaceX's, and other Musk-led companies' successes spread, business leaders across industries began to reassess their own practices. Conferences dedicated to ethical leadership and sustainable innovation became the norm, and academic institutions incorporated Musk's Bible-inspired model into their curricula. Entrepreneurs started to see that a commitment to core human values could serve as a competitive advantage, a way to foster loyalty, reduce turnover, and create a brand that resonated with both employees and consumers alike. In boardrooms far beyond Silicon Valley, leaders who had long equated success with cutthroat competition were gradually embracing a more balanced approach. They recognized that by treating people with dignity and embedding principles of fairness and accountability into the corporate DNA, they could build organizations that were not only profitable but resilient in the face of economic turbulence. In turn, these businesses contributed to a growing movement that challenged the traditional metrics of success. Profit was no longer measured solely in numbers. It was also gauged by employee satisfaction, community impact, and the company's ability to inspire and elevate its stakeholders. The ripple effect extended even into society at large. As Musk's companies thrived under these new principles, customers began to demand more ethical practices from all businesses. Retailers, manufacturers, and service providers took note, leading to a quiet revolution in corporate responsibility. Communities began to see tangible benefits as companies increased their philanthropic efforts, invested in local infrastructure, and established programs to promote education and environmental sustainability. Public opinion shifted, and the narrative around success evolved from a zero-sum game to one of shared prosperity and mutual respect. For Elon Musk himself, this journey was as much about personal evolution as it was about corporate transformation. In private moments, away from the glare of public scrutiny and the relentless pace of technological innovation, Musk reflected on the unexpected clarity he had found in ancient texts. The Bible, with its timeless wisdom on leadership and humanity, had not been a tool of religious dogma for him, but a source of practical guidance in navigating the complexities of modern life. It's not about imposing beliefs on others, he once confided to his leadership team, but about acknowledging that certain principles, fairness, humility, generosity, and justice, are universal. They transcend time and culture, and they have the power to build not just better companies, but a better world. His vision of a corporate culture that harmoniously blended state-of-the-art innovation with deep ethical roots soon became a benchmark for future generations. Workshops, mentoring programs, and interdepartmental initiatives designed to pass down these core values ensured that the legacy of his Bible-inspired revolution would persist long after he stepped away from day-to-day management. Young entrepreneurs, inspired by Musk's example, began to view leadership as a responsibility not only to shareholders but also to society at large. They embraced a more holistic model of success, one that measured achievements in terms of positive impact, sustainable growth, and the ability to uplift communities. The global business community, once driven solely by the metrics of profit and market share, found itself at a crossroads. Musk's bold integration of ancient wisdom had challenged the status quo, proving that ethical leadership was not an obstacle to progress, but a vital engine for long-term innovation. Companies around the world that had adopted similar practices reported higher levels of innovation, increased employee retention, and a renewed commitment to corporate social responsibility. In many ways, what began as a personal experiment for Musk had grown into a global movement, a call for a new era of business where success was defined not just by financial results, but by the positive legacy left for future generations. As this remarkable transformation continued to unfold, Elon Musk's influence was felt not only in the boardrooms and factories of his companies, but also in the hearts and minds of everyday people. His legacy was redefined. No longer was he seen solely as the visionary behind rockets and electric cars, but as a leader who dared to bridge the gap between the empirical and the existential. In a world often divided by rigid ideologies, Musk had demonstrated that embracing a spectrum of ideas, from cutting-edge science to ancient wisdom, could pave the way for a more inclusive, empathetic, and resilient society. And so, as the years marched on and Musk's companies continued to flourish under the steady guidance of these timeless principles, his blueprint for ethical leadership became a beacon for the future. It served as a powerful reminder that sometimes the most profound innovations are not those that alter the physical world, but those that transform the way we treat each other. In the legacy of Elon Musk, the pages of an ancient book found new relevance, a guiding light for building a world where technology and humanity advanced hand in hand, united by the enduring values of fairness, humility, generosity, and justice. If you enjoyed this story, there's another video on screen right now. Go ahead and give it a look for an even more astonishing stories. Make sure you subscribe to our channel, that way you'll never miss our newest uploads.